it's Roll for Crit here today, bringing you Read for Crit, as we are going to talk about the graphic novel adventure series from Van Ryder Games. This is a series of graphic novels actually originally published in the French language, brought over here to America, and translated for our shores by Van Ryder Games. And they are basically an evolution of the concept of a choose-your-own-adventure book from back in the day, only with comic panels instead of just text. So anytime that you see a number in a panel, that means that you can go to that number panel in the book, you flip through and find it, and you do that thing. And sometimes there will be choices, and you can go to the left or to the right. Sometimes there will be puzzles to solve, riddles to solve.
There is a first part that's usually introductory that isn't really numbered, but then after that you'll see different numbers there, and some of them may have puzzles, and some may even say you cannot return here if you've seen this panel before, or if this is not the first time you've seen this panel, go to this one instead.
Yeah, oftentimes your choices will matter like that, like maybe talk to a person and maybe they won't talk to you again depending on what you say to them. Some of them, as I said, are more complicated. They're more RPG-like, where you actually have stats and you may actually pick up items along the way, whereas some are slightly more simple and you're just more like a traditional choose-your-own-adventure. You're just going through and seeing what you see.
Yeah, there are actually 5 novels part of the first set. I believe another set will be coming out soon, or at least a Kickstarter for it. So we're going to focus on these 5. I think we should start with, we'll start with this one. This is, I think, one of the more basic of them bunch.
Sure.
Tears of the Goddess.
Yes.
In this one, you are pretty much playing as, you're trying to reclaim these Tears of the Goddess, which are pretty much like seeds from these, I guess you could call them assassins, a group of thieves and assassins, 3 of them to be exact. And it is up to you to catch them. What were your thoughts on them?
Tears of a Goddess, I thought this one was pretty cool. Like you said, it's one of the simpler ones. It's a good one, I think, to kind of introduce you to some concepts. It had some light things in it where you could actually choose a path, sort of, a profession, a specialty. For instance, you could be proficient in weapons. And as you're playing, it might say, hey, if you're good at weapons, do this. If not, you have to find another way around it. So it kind of gives you some incentive to replay for that reason. This one in particular, I definitely replayed a few times because it's one where I think that one and Captive as well, and maybe to some extent some of the other ones, have a thing where you kind of learn better as you go. It almost reminds me of like Groundhog Day or one of those kind of situations or a video game really, where like you die in the levels, but then you replay it and you have more knowledge and go through it again.
I definitely want to revisit that a little later after we go through all of them. I will say this is actually the 3rd one I read out of it, because we read them in different orders, we should mention.
There's no actual order to read them in.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty much
whatever you want.
Yeah. This was actually probably my least favorite of the bunch. I felt of them all, it felt like I did do this one a lot too, partly because it felt like there were a lot of you're done, you're over. I felt like when some of the others had a bit more other ways to find, like you said, you can choose either stealth, disguise, or weapon skills. But there are plenty of times when I either was really like, well, you're dead. Or like it was so obvious I was gonna get a horrible ending. Like I was like, because of what I've seen in the other novels, I was like, I'm just gonna, it might as well be a dead end for me. So I wasn't feeling it as much as the others.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think that, why don't we talk, I feel like why don't we talk about Captive right now? Because I feel like these two have the most in common, in my opinion. Right. Captive is one where, simple story, you're a guy, your daughter has been kidnapped, and you're trying to go through this creepy house and find the guy who took her and take her back. And this one is definitely the most graphic of all of them. It's like super dark and bloody.
Oh, that kind of I'm like, I mean, they're all comics, John.
No, yeah, this one is definitely strictly an adult book, very violent, but in I thought a cool way. But I thought both of them had that kind of a thing where sometimes you'd hit a panel and be like, oh yeah, I'm dead. And sometimes if it was I think the annoying things are when it's just it's not even, doesn't take away your health away. It's like you're saying, it's just. You have no choice. Sometimes I would honestly just go back and say, let's just pretend I didn't do that rather than start over.
To me, I like that better in Captive. And the reason why is, for particular Captive and the Sherlock Holmes one, which we'll get to, they're very more just more like your classic choose your own adventure. It's really just you're going through, and what you see is what you get. When the tiers, the Lupa in your town, have more RPG elements and stuff, and with Captive, it felt more like I could just go back or find the path like you're learning. When this, I'm like, did I choose the wrong skill set or something? Like I was wondering, like that was more the stats reasons behind it. So
I definitely found, in my opinion, that at least, but this could be different for different people. But when I played through, my best run and the one I won on in tiers was weapons.
Oh no,
that seemed to be
I
the best.
saw that a lot, and I did not choose weapons. So I'm just like, God, I made the wrong choice. But I tried to keep what I chose and see if.
Oh yeah, each time I switched. So
I wanted to be like, can I find it with the way I.
Because also, I think it's more fun that way too, because it's like, oh yeah, I died, but I know for a fact there's path A, B, and C I didn't take.
Right.
So now I get to see, it's like a
I guess for me, I was like, I wanted to see if I could make it with.
You're challenging yourself. So yeah, in Captive, I like this one a lot. I think I definitely did like it better than Tears. The theme kind of was cooler to me. I thought the horror element came through really well.
Right. It does still have, I think, all of these in that one. So the house has, it almost feels like Betrayal. There's like, I guess this makes sense. It's in a room. It's like not horror themed, but just a lot of weird horror tropes in there. But what I do like about Captives is I felt like, compared to a lot of them, it felt like I didn't feel nearly as punished for exploring. If that makes sense.
I think so. Well, another thing that both Tears and Captive have in common is a time system, wherein at certain points you will see a symbol on the panel, which means that you have to mark a point of time. And I thought Captive did it really well, where you might enter a room, and if you went to the left and did some stuff first and then went to the right, it would say, if you have more than 3 time, then maybe a guy will hit you when you walk around a corner. But if you were early enough, you catch him first and you can hit him.
No, that one I really thought it worked very well. Now, I think this one was just to see endings. I don't remember as much.
Pretty much, yeah. It would decide when, it would change when you were like finished with your quest. So you had a time limit, but it wasn't super important. This one, often it comes into play, and I thought it really made it feel like you were actually walking in a living place.
That one actually reminded me a lot of Resident Evil. In fact, the original one is because in it you also have a very limited inventory. So there was a lot of deciding of like, do I carry this? And when you came up with things like, did you carry that? You're like, oh, of course I dropped that.
Yeah.
But I like that a lot.
I thought it was also very point and click adventure like, where and realizing, oh, I found a panel where it says like you need this item, and then I would play through it again and be like, all right, I got to go here first to get this item. Like figuring out the optimal path. I enjoyed doing in that one.
Now we've been focusing on these two a lot. Why don't we get to start this one? Let's get to the one, my first one.
Yeah, and my first one as well. We both chose to play this one first. Well, I guess I chose for you to play it first.
Yeah.
I lent it to you. I think it's a silent P. I can't be positive about that. Loup Garou. It means werewolf or something along those lines. You play as a character who becomes a werewolf, and this one is very much, I think, the most like a classic role-playing game. You have stats.
This one actually has a skill tree, which you can choose to level up, which is actually really fun. But I want to get to that a little bit after your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so as my first one, I was really happy with this one. Basically, it kind of comes into two aspects, I think, when you're exploring like the kinds of encounters you have. It's either a combat, or usually there'll be like a puzzle or a riddle to solve. The combat in this one I thought was fairly well done. You can use this wheel they include in there, which is very weird, or you can just roll a die.
It was much easier. Yeah, 6-sided die.
And I thought it was, it's not a super in-depth concept. It's not like, you're not going to get the kind of complexity you would from a real board game or role-playing game, but it worked well enough. But I was really more intrigued by the riddles, and I found that to be a very fun, satisfying thing, of a way of stopping you and making. I would put the book down and try to come up with the answer and come back.
And the riddles, I did not solve them, but they were I liked coming across them. And they're like, there was one, I don't want to say, I was about to say the answer because I remember, I was like, what is it?
My one big gripe with those riddles, which I just don't know how you could do it, is if you have a guess and you think you're right, you turn to the panel, but if you were wrong, you just see the answer. So there's no way to, I wish you could somehow, I don't know, there's really no way to do it because it's just a book, but I wish I could make a guess and not immediately find out, oh, I was wrong.
I think that this one did a bit better on how to do that. Sherlock Holmes, the way they actually do in this, so the riddle, you said they do that. The way, this comes with 4 cases. So the way this works is when it was, let's say, the first one, so we're not spoiling too much, is about where's a cat? Very difficult case. And it'll show you a map, and each one has a number that doesn't correspond to a panel. It's what you write down later for checking for answers and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's how you try to solve the mysteries. Basically, you can choose to either play as Sherlock Holmes or Watson as you go through, and they each kind of have different skills in different areas.
Yeah, initially I thought that it was going to be like if you expect to see more bodies and stuff because Watson's the doctor, that's who you should choose. But it does seem to turn out it's literally just Watson's the easy mode, with Sherlock Holmes being if you want to be more difficult on yourself.
Basically, yes. They will both, in the parts where it actually matters who you are, they'll both kind of give you the same information. It's just you have to do a little bit more critical thinking on your own to do on the Sherlock path. But it was still enough that what I did was I played through all of them as Watson, and then I played through all of them as Sherlock first, and then afterwards I went through again as Watson to be like, okay, I think I got some of these wrong, so now I'm going to go through and just try to explore everything and put all the pieces together in my head. So I thought that, it's not much, but it's something to give you a little more replay value. And just in general, that might be one of my favorites in terms of the art style and the sort of sense of humor of it. It's just kind of an engaging, fun character thing to look at. And of course, if you like Sherlock Holmes,
that's why. For me, I'm just like, I'm a Sherlock Holmes fan, so
it is fun that way. It actually kind of is takes place after all the Sherlock Holmes novels, from what I can tell, and it
takes place after one of because I think he wrote some after. I can't remember. Because I've seen so much Sherlock Holmes at this point, I have to remember what's actually Arthur Conan Doyle not.
It does actually reference the actual stories, which is kind of neat. So you could kind of think, oh, this is almost feels like it's
I will
canon.
say, you don't be afraid that because you haven't read them. It's not like you don't need to know previous cases to solve some of the riddles. That's just more for flavor and atmosphere.
Certainly not. So when we get to the final one we haven't talked about yet, is called Your Town. Mm-hmm. This is a Western in which you are the new mayor of a town in the Wild West, and you're trying to build it up, build buildings, attract people to your town, etc. This is definitely the weirdest of all of these. It is the most involved, most complicated in terms of its systems. Not only are you going through the panels like the other ones, talking to people, choosing where to go, solving some puzzles, but in this one, you also have an entire map of a grid, and you'll meet people, and you can actually buy houses from them or ask them to build things for you and decide where they go, and those will actually give you income, and there's a lot of things you have to keep track of, including your population, your approval rating as the mayor, your weaponry, your items, how many bullets you have.
Honestly, we sort of, in the path we went, it's least likely you can take on a train with you. Like this one, you need to have pieces of paper in front of you and stuff. And
yeah, I actually did it. They have printouts of all the stuff online. I actually just downloaded an image of that map and did it in Photoshop.
I mean, I printed it out and just wrote on it.
But however you want to do it. But it's definitely, there's just a lot of stats you need to keep track of. This is another one that has a time aspect in it. In this one, you actually only have a year technically in game to play. Every time you see a clock, it means you change the month.
Mm-hmm. And every time you come back from whatever your adventures are, counts as a month too.
Right.
So afterwards, you tally up a score, and depending on what happens, you are either a good mayor, according to the book, or a terrible one.
I think this one probably has... feels the most like a game, mm-hmm. And I think for that reason it has the most replay value because there's so many ways that you could choose to build your houses, and they have different end goals you can try to go for, so you can really sort of decide because you cannot, there's no way. Most of these you can kind of do most things in 2 runs. In this one, there are so many paths that get cut off or changed.
That's
I can hear you disagree.
because when looking to this one, I had a blast reading through it, but when I got to the end of the scoring, I didn't do so hot, apparently. And I'm like, so what did I possibly do? Because I thought my town was great. Like, I was in multiple sectors. I built almost every building. And from what I can tell, it's like, if you didn't do the bounty hunting in it, you're going to have a really hard time doing a good scoring system. Your town in Sherlock in particular, the werewolf one a little bit. I don't think Captive in Tears had it, but there's a lot of like, I hope you were looking around for typewriter keys or horseshoes and stuff like that.
There's stuff hidden in the panels that is like separate that may help you later that you can write down, yeah.
And because I did Your Town before some of the other ones, before it's Sherlock. And I know one of them was you get a lot of points if you found a lot of horseshoes and coins, which I just happened didn't get that many. So when I got hit Sherlock, I was like, they have the typewriter keys you need to find. And I was just like, I cannot advance unless I find all. Like, that's what I felt like after playing this one.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a lot harder in Your Town because the art style, the choice that they went with.
Oh no, they were easier to find them in this one.
Everything is brown in Your Town, and I mean like everything. It is basically monochromatic, which I thought was, at first I was like, oh, that's a cool choice, and then I realized it's every panel, and I found it very boring to look at. I gotta say, Your Town is my least favorite of the bunch. I just found it. It felt very kind of overly difficult to me to do well, and maybe I was just bad at it.
No, that's why to me Your Town's like almost separate because while I was doing it without knowing the end, like scoring and everything, I was having a blast. Like I was doing salary. I was like, oh, I can build a town here and do this here, and then like, oh, I'm getting rewarded for building a large sheriff's place, or oh, I got in trouble for building like. But when I hit the end, I just felt like that's why, like, for me, it's I could say this is my least favorite for just that, but this one's like, it almost is depending on what moment it was when I loved or hated.
Yeah, for me, I did not have a blast. So I had the same experience, but without the fun part. There's a thing in Your Town where their method of combat is you shoot with your gun.
Oh yeah, that's dropping the pen.
You hold a pencil 6 inches above the book and drop it, and if it hits the target, you shot them. Which is kind of a funny idea, but because like the way these books are, sometimes they're not completely flat, it might roll. It just felt very pointlessly random. It was a funny idea, but I would have liked if there was maybe a system that was like, you could spend 2 bullets to guarantee a hit or something, because that didn't work for me at all. And just in general, also this one, I think by nature of the concept, it's not really about a story. It's your story personally, but the characters don't really, I feel, progress and interact with you the same way they do in the other 4 that feel like you could turn these into a movie, but this feels more like a video game, like it's just my video game, like it's Harvest Moon or something, as opposed to being like a character with a progression and a arc.
I actually... That's one of the things I wanted to bring up now overall with the Choose Your Own Adventure. You know, as a kid, I had a couple Goosebump ones, which I loved.
You didn't have the classics?
No, I did not have those classic ones. And we also played, which you'll have a review of later this month, I believe, maybe next, I'm not sure, I think it's actually next month, for the Choose Your Own Adventure game.
From Z-Man.
Yeah. And when I'm thinking about them, in particular like this, like, well, it is fun. And I think video games are a great analogy. It reminds me a lot of playing like an old Mario, which is like, it was great, but having save points, do we really want to go back to games when they didn't have save points? Like, some of these were a little annoying jumping back and forth. Like, even like the Sherlock Holmes one, which is very linear because it's cases. It's like, you go to interview someone, and like, does it really need to be not the next panel? Do I have to flip all the way over to like?
Well, I think that's the nature of like.
I know it just seems.
I think they had to do it that way because so that you didn't like flip. Like I think there is a reason to why everything is numbered where it is, as opposed to being next page. Yeah, I mean, yes, you can get it can get. Usually, I would have one finger and just hold and go back and forth.
I usually had like 3 fingers.
Yeah, I get that. I can see that being a little tedious. Didn't but I thought that for me, I thought that overall the fun that I had with them was worth the minor hiccups that I had like that. I will say there were maybe a few other things specifically where I found like. Some things weren't translated quite the best, or they forgot to translate something. Actually, there is one instance in one of these books.
I don't recall coming across that.
In Tears of a Goddess, there is an item that is called something different. It says it's called a fumigant, which is the French way of saying smoke bomb. And there's another panel that says you need a smoke bomb, but I didn't know that I had that. So that's one instance.
I think I did come across that. I didn't know that.
Overall, like I would say, I want to give like my rankings. I would go. Your Town is for me at the bottom, but I could see why. I think some people might rank it as the highest because I think it just is a different kind of thing. Tears of a Goddess, I'd probably put 4th. Then maybe Loup Garou, Captive, and I think Sherlock Holmes is probably my favorite one. But I liked Captive a lot too.
Honestly, I'm not going to argue with your list because it's probably the same. Like I said, this one for me is just so polar that
you maybe switch those.
Maybe, but like it's because like this one made me feel like I got to the end of this one first without too many hitches, the werewolf one. And I remember after playing Your Town, I started thinking like, did I just happen to choose the optimal path like of the skill trees? Can I not actually use the other skills well? Like it made me question if they were viable or not. Just because the way the scoring system worked in that one. Mm-hmm. But then playing Captive, I sort of lost that feeling again because I played Captive after this one and I had a blast with that. Sherlock I love the mysteries, and in particular, I was a little worried because of this if I wouldn't actually find out who did it. But at the end, they just say, yeah, here's Sherlock explains it to you, which is what you'd sort of want.
If you want to read it. You don't have to read that section if you don't think you
Right, which is nice too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in there for sure. Yeah, so a lot of that stuff is great. Overall, like the art style and all of them, it's different. They're all made by different writers and artists. It's not like just one person made these books, so you get a very different experience out of each of them. But I think that's really cool because, especially getting the whole set, it's really fun to be like, what genre am I going to dive into now? Another thing that is a general flaw, I think, the binding on these books. Hopefully, this is something in future printings they might fix.
I actually looked this up.
Yeah,
and apparently the Polish copies have a much better binding. People are saying, and are still pretty much in English. But yeah, like the Sherlock Holmes one here.
I was just playing Your Town earlier today, and it's literally these pages fell out.
I don't know if there's any pages falling out, but yeah, like
it's rough.
Part of it is because you're flipping back and forth to so many different things. Unfortunately,
yeah, but it would be nice. You know, they go for it's like $22 or so for a book. I can get a better deal through their site if you get all 5 in one go.
But you get that nice box.
Yeah, you get that cool collection. And honestly, I would say, if this sounds like something that you would like, if you like narrative stories and adventures and role-playing games, especially of the solo variety, you do these all by yourself. Honestly, I would say even with the ones that I didn't like as much, I think it's worth getting all 5.
I mean,
because I just think it's a really cool concept. And if you like that kind of thing, I think you will have fun with it.
Yeah, and in particular, I definitely think these 3 are absolutely worth it. I had a blast and don't regret doing those 3.
Yeah, Captive, Loup Garou, and Sherlock Holmes.
This one, maybe I just didn't have as much fun with it. And the Your Town, as I said, up until the point, I had fun. So maybe if you just do that and not go for the scoring.
I think like I said, for a certain kind of person, they will really like this because it does feel kind of like a SimCity Harvest Moon.
I know,
thing,
yeah. I was like building these weird little towns. I remember thinking, and I felt so good building a park. We should mention this is extra. So not in addition to the pricing, you said that you can get bookmarks for each one.
You could also print them out for free if you don't want to buy the nice.
Which is sort of nice for most of them besides Your Town, as we said, because there's so much stuff you want bookmark. You can write the time there, notes, which is great in case that way you don't have to do it all in one go.
They also have resources online, so even though there are parts of the book that say, oh, you can mark here with your pencil, you can always print something out, so you never have to actually write in the book, so you can reuse them, which is nice.
You don't have to make it a legacy game.
They are publishing another set of these. It's kickstarting in March of 2019 and then released to the public later. And we do know that what's coming in that set is actually 2 more Sherlock Holmes books.
Well,
in the same universe.
even if you read it, I think they say like to be continued or something. And
then there are 2 themed around pirates, and then there's a superhero one. So it'll be interesting to see how they go with that. But it seems like clearly a lot of people had Sherlock Holmes as a favorite because like they're coming out with 2 more, and those ones seem even more different because you can play as his love interest, whose name I forget, Irina or Ada.
I'm totally blanking now too. Yeah,
and I think they're more different paths. I think there's actually one where you also can play as Moriarty himself in one of them. So some very interesting stuff with that. I mean, it's a concept that I feel like just perfect for me for my sensibilities. I overall had a lot of fun with them. I definitely recommend looking at them, and if you think you like it, go all in, or just be like, oh, if you love horror stuff. Captive is a great one for you. If you love Sherlock Holmes, no brainer.
Yeah.
So if you're more like a role playing gamer, I think that the werewolf one, Loup Garou, is a great one to start with.
Yeah. I think the stories are still enjoyable. Because it's a choose your own adventure, don't expect some hugely deep narrative because, they can't tell if you've hit every panel.
Right.
There are some kids in here where I did not find things and I was like, I think this is the answer, But still, like I said, I had fun reading through them. If you like playing any kind of those like point and click, as you said, or any kind of a game where you think you have free choice to do things and it's not just a linear path, this might be a good thing to, it's a side adventure to read and maybe stay away from a screen a little bit.
Yeah, graphic novel adventures, they're definitely good fits for like a long train ride or a plane trip or something like that. You can find them online in various places, Van Ryder Games' website, and other things like that. We would love to hear from you in the comments. How do you rank the graphic novels? Have you played any or all of them? Did you enjoy them? What do you think they should do for the future? Do you have ideas for new subject settings or new kind of innovative ways that they could take things, do things in different directions? I feel like there's a lot of good possibilities. Talk to us in those comments or on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. And please keep on reading out there, whether it be game books or real books.
Or instruction books.
Yeah, those are good too. Or Prima Player's Guides for the N64.
But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit.